So that must mean that the all-in cost to buy a wrecked salvage title Audi R8. In today's video, I'm gonna answer the single most common question I get about this Audi R8. And that is, of course, hey man, nice car, what'd you pay for it? Do you think they're genuinely curious and they wanna consider maybe buying one for themselves? Or are people just really nosy and wanna know more about your personal finances? It's because people are nosy. So before I tell you what that number is, let me just say that this has been my favorite car I've ever owned and ever driven. And no matter what number I drop on you in just a few minutes, I don't really care. This car's worth it. So when I started my hunt for a wrecked exotic car, I went to the auto auctions because I knew I'd find a cheap version there. The first car that I found was a 2009 R8. It had rear end damage, and using context clues like an Instagram username on the side window, followed by crypto rich on the rear window, I was able to find the previous owner on Instagram, send him a message, and he let me know that he crashed his R8 doing 100 miles per hour. Now 100 miles per hour is a lot of energy. So the thought of my car that I was gonna rebuild going through a 100-mile-per-hour crash didn't sound so good. So the first significant number in this video is $29,000. Nope, that's not what I paid for this car. That's what the 2009 R8 sold for. And I didn't buy that car because I found this one. So then I came across this car. This car was in Ohio. And fortunately in Ohio, all the police records are public. So using the VIN number and Carfax, I found the exact date that this car was crashed. And then I used that date to look back on police records and found the exact crash, what happened and who was involved. So that information led me to the previous owner. I spoke with him, we talked about the car. He told me how the crash happened. It was unfortunate, but everybody I think was safe. And well, I bought the car. Ready to hear what I paid? There's a freaking black cat walking behind the camera right now. On November 17th, I bought this car for a high bid, a total price of $42,975. This is the completely reasonable part where you ask why I would spend $14,000 more on this car than that last car that was 1 year newer. And I have the answer, it lies inside. 6-speed, gated, manual transmission. That's the only reason. There's no other reason. Stop looking. Now before you get all excited and think, wow, I can buy an Audi R8 for the price of a used 4Runner, not so fast. $42,900 is what I spent for the wrecked car. Wait till you hear how much I spent fixing it. I feel a little beat up inside telling you that I spent 40 grand on a broken car, so let me floor it and I'll feel better. Shipping and transportation for this car cost me about $700. Now on top of that, before they would allow me to pick up the car and ship it back home, I had to pay $3,100 in buyer fees. I don't know what buyer fees are, and I'm pretty sure the more expensive your car is, the higher the buyer fee. So before they'd let me bring it back home, I had to spend about $3,800 in fees and shipping. So that sucked a lot. If you've been watching the videos from the beginning, you remember what this looked like when it first rolled into the garage. In order to get it to look like this, I had to buy a whole bunch of parts, not only from eBay Motors, but also many things that came direct from Volkswagen in Germany. So the combination of body work that I had to do, remember, this is just parts alone. I did pay $350 to have my good friend weld in that frame cross member, but I just bought the rest of the parts and I did all of the work. That was $4,950 just for body work. So right after spending $5,000 on bodywork right behind my head, I had to dig into the wheels, tires, and suspension, all which needed replacement, and that cost me $4,489. That also sucked. The rear end of this car saw a fair bit of damage to the electronics. In replacing all of the lights and sensors, I spent about $1,000, but in comparison to everything else, that was peasant money. Except it wasn't. It also hurt. All of it hurt. The good news is once I was finished with the bodywork, the framework, the paint, the rear suspension, the tires and wheels, I was completely finished spending money on this car. Could you tell that was a lie? That was a lie. So once you've fixed all the things that caused this car to become a salvage title vehicle or totaled by the insurance company, you have to have all of your work inspected at a safety inspection agency that performs enhanced vehicle inspections. So when I rolled up to the inspection station, they told me my car failed before the inspection even began. That's because this car had 70% window tint wrapped around the entire thing. On any coupe on the road that's going through an enhanced vehicle inspection, all the windows have to allow 70% of light to go through. So I drove the car back home, removed all the window tint in about 20 minutes. I had no idea what I was doing. I actually did it completely wrong, left tons of adhesive residue on the windows, and I'm still trying to figure out a way to remove it today. Once that passes, you need to earn your 2 stickers here, which represents your annual safety inspection, as well as your emissions sticker. And in Pennsylvania, that's what they look like. So once your vehicle's been inspected, you take all the inspection paperwork and submit it off to the state. The state gives you a new title that says rebuilt title on it, and that can be used to register your vehicle. Now, registration costs a few dollars, but unfortunately, this is the point where the state is going to charge you sales tax on the entire cost of the rebuild, the value of the car, and the parts that you had to replace. That means in my case, I had to write another check for $3,535. The final check I had to write before I had to write other checks for other things. So that must mean that the all-in cost to buy a wrecked salvage title Audi R8 and rebuild it to bring it back on the road like it is today cost me $61,369. Damn. About a week ago, I asked anyone who was following along on the Ed Gasket Instagram page to give their guess as to what was the total price spent on the entire build of our Audi R8. There were a bunch of guesses ranging anywhere from $16,532, thank you, Mr. Philly, all the way up to $69,420, thank you, Mr. Griffith. A gentleman who goes by the name of Wardy in Tennessee actually had the closest guess at $62,400. So Mr. Wardy, you just won yourself a t-shirt. Also, I'm gonna need your address. So I'm 62 grand into it and you're still here because you wanna know what the car is worth. Let me tell you. That was way harder than I meant to. If you head over to Auto Tempest, you can organize by the cheapest Audi R8 for sale in America. This first one doesn't count because it's actually a salvage title and still has damage, but the next cheapest car is $63,000. Now this car also has a rebuilt title, but as you see up close, it's an automatic transmission. Oh, but don't you forget, our car is a manual. If we organize by manual transmission only, you'll find that the cheapest Audi R8 in America with a gated manual transmission is $78,000. Now, before you go tell me I made a risky financial decision, remember that in the time since I bought this car, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell about 3.8%, the NASDAQ 12%, and the S&P 500 5%. Which means the single best financial decision I've made since buying this car was buying this car. Also worth noting, if you are going to rebuild a project like this, head over to eBay Motors to buy your repair parts. That's what I did, and I saved almost $4,000. Go to the dealer for, well, nothing, and then go to eBay Motors for everything else. Now remember, 7% is an annual return average on the stock market. So to sell this car to make 7%, I'd sell it for $65,662, which would be a steal. I think I'd keep it for about 3 months before making any decisions on what to do with it. Although it is pretty bad on gas. Guess it's not that bad. Well, if you're like everybody else in this gas station wondering what it is I'm filming related to this car, that means you need to subscribe to Ed Gasket, like the video, and kiss me on the mouth if you're my wife.